Welcome to episode 504 here on Gravel Guru. The biggest thing we have going on, closest thing to breaking news in the gravel community, Dirty Kanza has postponed. Stay tuned for the rest of the episode. We've got race director Leland Danes, and we've got Neil joining us in the studio. Hey, welcome back to episode 504 of This is Gravel here on Gravel Guru. This is probably the closest we come in the gravel cycling media industry to breaking news. What we've got today happening here Sunday, April 5th out of downtown Emporia, Kansas. Let me tell you, it feels odd here in the studio though. Bobby and Neil should be right there, but they're not because of COVID-19. What the main subject of the show is rescheduling and having to move things around to different places. But thankfully, for technology, guess what? Neil's still next to me. Hey, Neil, big news happening today. Tell me about it.
Absolutely. So I was on my phone just around 6 o'clock this evening, and the news is that Dirty Kansa has been rescheduled. The dates for that now are going to be September 10th, 11th, with the race then taking place on the 12th. So it sounds like we have the full expo coming on that Thursday, Friday. So everything being planned as normal, and then the race happening September 12th, which is just, it's wild. This is what 2020 is for us, Matt, as a race season.
Yeah, absolutely. Lots of pieces moving here and there and everywhere into the fall. Spring, or fall is the new spring for us, it appears. I think we're going to be going from one event to the next all, August through, assuming we are back riding bikes then. But I want to give a huge shout out to Leland Danes. He's coming up right now on the show. Just a few moments ago, I was able to get him pinned down, and he was more than gracious to do about a 10-minute interview with us and kind of walk us through all the details of what went into this, and what they're trying to do and how they're helping the cyclists that are affected by this. So let's just cut to his interview real quick. Big news coming out of you guys down at Dirty Kansa headquarters today. Rescheduling the Dirty Kansa 200 slated for May. Why don't you give us a little background about the new dates and what you're expecting?
Yeah, well, for starters, we don't get to operate out of DKHQ anymore. I haven't for a few weeks now. We haven't been going out of the office. But that leads us to our news, which is this coronavirus, COVID-19, is changing a lot of stuff. Most importantly, the date of when we will host the 2020 Dirty Kansa. We are postponing. The event will not take place on Saturday, May 30th. It will instead be moved to the weekend of Thursday, September 10th through Sunday, September 13th, with the race day, of course, being Saturday the 12th.
Yeah. I think this has been a big question on people's minds. Is it going to happen as we've seen professional sports of all types get moved around and the like, that Dirty Kansa is a professional sport. You've got professional athletes all the way down to the everyday average Joe coming in to race on this. Obviously, this wasn't a decision that was probably easy for you guys to make. What kind of went into that process?
Well, it was less than ideal, obviously, right? And we stated a couple weeks back that we aimed to make a decision on or before May 1st. So we knew that a decision needed to be made eventually. At the time that we made that announcement, we didn't know what that decision was going to have to be. Like everyone, we were holding our breath a bit and just kind of trying to monitor the situation. I think optimistically in the back of our heads, we were thinking, hey, maybe there's a chance this thing does die down and maybe we do flatten this curve. But as everyone knows, you've been following along to the news, that's maybe we are getting a bit of a handle on it, but it's still a real concern. And at the end of the day, as important as Dirty Kansa is to us, as important it is to this community, as important it is to our volunteers and our riders, it's not worth the health of all of those people, our community members, our participants, our volunteers, everyone that we love so dearly. And so, honestly, it was an easy decision to make the right decision, which is to attempt to postpone. And when I say attempt to postpone, we've established that date as a date we hope to be able to run Dirty Kansa in 2020. But we acknowledge that we're going to be continuing to monitor this situation along with our public health officials, our emergency directors, our city officials, and all of the counties that we go ride our bikes in for Dirty Kansa. And so hopefully not, but we'll see what September brings us. There's always the chance that the outlook is still not good and we need to do the responsible thing and not even ride in September. That's a long, long ways away. And so all I can say to that is we'll continue to watch the situation. And we are optimistic that we will flatten the curve in that amount of time, that the summer heat hopefully will have an effect in kicking this thing down a little bit for us. And hopefully we're all in a much better situation and there's an appetite for getting together.
Yeah, absolutely. It'll still be good. Hopefully we can get together in September. As an athlete or somebody traveling to Emporia for this event in September, what can they expect? We're still doing 200 miles. We're still doing 100. What are they going to expect when they come into Emporia that day?
Yeah, we have every expectation of being able to run all of our 6 distances as planned. So that's the 350, the XL, the 200, the 100, the 50, the 25, and our high school event. That's our current outlook. We have no reason to deviate from that at this time. All distances, we'll run the courses we had anticipated doing in May. Another big change this year, I guess it'd be an addition. There's going to be a lot of changes because it's a brand new date. But an addition would be the Great American Market. This is a downtown event that Emporia Main Street manages and has run for a number of years. And Emporia Main Street, of course, is responsible for our finish line block party and has since about 2010 maybe when we moved downtown. They've been great partners of ours. And so when we were looking at dates, we initially thought, well, we can't do Dirty Kansa because Great American Market's there. But then we just called up Jess Buchholz and Casey Woods down there at Main Street. We said, hey, could these exist on the same weekend? And they're like, yeah, that's probably the best case scenario. And so what that means for you guys is, and for Great American Market vendors and followers, is that we will have a bigger, better finish line block party than we've ever had. I can assure you it'll be more blocks than we've ever had before just because of the size of the Great American Market. And there will be other changes like that we just have to look at optimistically and positively. And there are opportunities for something new. This is the 15th year of Dirty Kansa. And it was a big, scary change when we moved downtown. And so I'm sure some people are thinking this is big, scary that we're moving our date for the first time in 15 years. Well, yeah, it's not the ideal situation. It's not what we had planned and prepped for, but as event promoters, you got to know to roll with the punches, and we got a left hook, and we're still standing, and we'll see what September brings us. But we think there's going to be a lot of positive, fun stuff going on.
Yeah, the Great American. Explain the Expo a little bit.
When I gave the dates of September 10th through the 13th, DK is a 4-day weekend. The 10th and the 11th would be the Thursday and Friday. That's our expo, the All Things Gravel Expo. The XL, of course, departs that Friday afternoon from the expo. And then Saturday would be the bulk of the race day for the other 5 distances, and then our Sunday awards ceremony. So, again, at this time, we expect to have that full lineup.
Yeah, Great American Market is obviously a big thing to all those of us that are here in Emporia. We know what that's like in the fall. Usually gorgeous weather, that type of thing. September can be, like when me and Neil went and did the Cannonball last year, somehow found a 95-degree day in September. So, people aren't out of the woods. They might be thinking, oh, it moved to fall. You mean we're not going to have to deal with those June or late May heat in Kansas? What's kind of, as a cyclist yourself growing up here, what would you tell people trying to think about the weather and think about all these other factors that are now changing?
Yeah, well, it's not all that unlike our current time frame. I mean, Dirty Kansa has traditionally been held the first Saturday after Memorial Day. This change, coincidentally, this was not intentional, it just happened to be the best weekend, but it's the weekend after Labor Day weekend. And so in this area of the world, I think you can expect very similar temperatures. It's pretty likely that it could still be quite warm on just the second Saturday of September. So Obviously, I can't give a 5-month, 6-month forecast, but I think there's a good chance we still have some pretty warm temperatures. It's not as if all the leaves are on the ground and snow's going to be coming. If we get snow at all in Kansas, it's not till late in the winter. So I'm optimistic for that. I think there's also less chance of rain. If maybe someone will have to fact check me, but if I was just to go with my gut feeling, I would anticipate there to be less rain in September than we have in May. So I think that's a bonus, a benefit.
Yeah, we live in Kansas for a reason. The weather can change 1 hour to the next, so can't really forecast that or change what we're going to see there. I guess as we start to wrap up here, Leland, what is one thing you guys as Lifetime and Dirty Kanza want the athletes to know? Obviously this is making plans change, and COVID-19 in general is making plans change. But what is one thing you want the athletes to understand about this?
Well, there's quite a bit I'd like for folks to understand, but most importantly, hopefully we've never given you a reason to doubt us or let you down in the past. We strive and work very hard. This is our year-round gig. This is what we do. We spend a lot of time, day in and day out, focusing on making the right decisions in the right time frame. We never want to rush anything. And so put your trust in us. We're going to work our tails off to deliver you the best DK experience we can, as we do every year. Every year we close out the Dirty Kanza and we say, man, how could it possibly get any better than this? And every year since I've been on the full-time staff, which is 7 years now, every year, the following year, we exceed expectations and it's better than the year before. And so I don't expect this to be any different. Assuming we get to ride in September and you guys all make it to Emporia and feel good about that decision, I think we're going to have a glorious time, because at the end of the day, we're riding bikes on gravel. We're pushing ourselves. None of that changes. The date has changed. That's it. Hopefully that date still works for you. You can join us, and we'll have the same rad time. We'll blow your minds, and it'll be spectacular. And you'll either get to that finish line or you won't. But either way, you'll learn something about yourself and what you're made of as part of the process. So You got a few more months to train. Yep. All right. Especially our northern friends, I know from folks from Canada are already relishing the extra summer months to prepare for this. So again, just look at the positives. There could be some downsides for you, and there will be some complications and challenges, but let's just overcome those hurdles and really have a positive outlook on this.
Yeah, I think some of the positives looking at it is to me, it seems like Dirty Kanza has gone above and beyond with you guys are offering 3 options for people. The first option being stay the course. You come party, you ride your bike in September here in Emporia. Option 2, you defer it. No big deal for next year, 2021. You come party with us next year. And option 3, you guys are offering a refund. How important was it to have options like that for you guys?
Well, extremely, and I'll add on to those decisions, particularly number 2 and 3 there. If you're familiar with our typical deferral policy, because this is a lottery event and the demand is simply so high, we have to run a lottery and we have to safeguard against that. And so our traditional deferral policy was one that if you could not join us this year, you could defer to the next year, but you would have to pay the entry fee again the following year. And what that did is it allowed you to bypass the lottery for the next year if you couldn't attend in the year that you got in. So still a pretty exceptional deal. But what we're saying is if you can tell us before May 15th, that's like 6 weeks. You got 6 weeks to figure out if you can join us on the new date. If you can't, you can defer to next year without having to pay the entry fee again. And if you simply want to refund outright, if you tell us by May 15th, you'll get your money back, no questions asked, less any processing fees or things of that nature. So minimal fees related to that. And so that was extremely important to us because these are difficult times and they're uncertain times. And we want to take care of our athletes. We wanted to put ourselves in the shoes of the athletes because we are gravel riders ourselves. We participate in events, and we understand what people are thinking, what they're concerned about. We're all concerned about will we have jobs in a couple more weeks if you still have the good fortune of being working right now. And so, we want to take care of people.
Yeah, absolutely. With that, I think going above and beyond with those options and the fact to defer it at no cost, I think will be big to a lot of families and a lot of racers right now. Hopefully, like I said, we're all partying here in September in Emporia and everybody decides to come hang out at it. But I know, Leland, this has been a crazy week for you guys. You guys just wrapped up your virtual camp online. Quick, how did that go for you guys as we're wrapping up here?
Oh, it was amazing. If you haven't tuned into that, if you haven't registered for that, I believe that you still can. Visit our website at dirtykanza.com. Under training, you'll see the virtual camp. And just a quick 60-second plug on that. It's only $10, and you get access to all 4 days worth of content. Some fun, most of them very informational. But that $10 proceeds off of that actually go to the Lyon County Disaster Relief Fund. So $10 for amazing content, and that $10 is going directly to help local Emporia businesses. It's such a win-win. I would encourage you to go there immediately, sign up for that virtual camp, watch some of the videos. And if you're not interested in the virtual camp, consider making a donation to that Lyon County Disaster Relief Fund anyways, because, in order for businesses to be able to offer refunds, or those that have had to shutter their doors, or whatever is going on, we'd like them to all come through this, and for Emporia to be the same Emporia in September that we would have shared with you had we been able to ride in May without all this going on. So give that some thought, but definitely the virtual camp is a good way to go about that.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Leland, for coming on the show. I know your phone's got to be blowing up about now, just making the announcement an hour or two before filming this with me today. But again, thanks for coming on. I'm sure we'll have lots more content relating to it in September as the months go on here, and we'll keep in touch.
Absolutely. Thanks, Matt.
Neil, we just heard from Leland down there at Dirty Kanza. What is your initial reaction to what he just told us?
Well, I mean, first of all, I would say kudos to them for making the call earlier than that May 1st date that they had originally planned on making it, as well as giving them kudos for giving people a lot of options. Really, I would say as a rider outside of this community, I would think that there's nothing to complain about. Riders inside this community, we're here already. We live here. We're local. So the date probably doesn't impact us as much. But if you can't fly in September, they've given you some great options, either in a complete deferral till next year, or, hey, here's your money back. So that was the first thing that when I heard them on Facebook Live, and then I heard Leland just talking here in the interview, that just took me back, that they are going above and beyond what any race that I've seen, whether it is cycling, whether it is running at this point, saying we're going to take care of our participants. And to me, that's part of what sets Dirty Kanza apart from the other events out there. They are taking care of anybody that took their time and their energy to get signed up, to start training, to say, look, if you can't do this new date, we're going to give you an option, and some really good options at that. So that was the first thing that hit me and really kind of said, hey, that's awesome. The second thing, man, September is going to be a whole lot different. For 14 years, this event's been the first weekend after Memorial Day, if I'm correct.
Correct. And side note, he mentioned it. It wasn't intentional, but this is now the first weekend after Labor Day. So you got your summer holidays there.
There you go. but you think about September, early June or late May can be really warm here. There's been Dirty Kansas where the temperature's been 100. There's been also Dirty Kansas where the temperature's been about 50. And I would say plan for it to be somewhere in between those two numbers come September. Because being here and being in Emporia, I know that in September's I've experienced anything from temperatures in the 50s to last year when me and Matt were riding in the Cannonball and it was 97 degrees.
And you couldn't carry enough water. There was not enough water.
No, for 60 miles, we did not have enough water to go. So don't think just because it's September that you're going to get maybe relief from the heat in the Flint Hills. That's not going to be the case. It could be just as warm of an event day, September 12th, as it could have been on May 30th. The other thing, though, that's going to be different, I would say that really everybody's got to consider that lines up that day. And I'm sure it's things that Leland and the rest of the crew is having to figure out is, is the daylight.
Correct.
There's a big shift that takes place between the daylight that would have been there for May 30th and for September 12th.
Yeah, let's take a step back here real quick. I think you're absolutely right. Echoing your thoughts. One, I think they did the right thing by making the call now. For May, I think we all got very nervous, and there was probably a lot of chatter on the inside circle of anybody that was involved in Dirty Kanza going, man, we're not going to know till May 1st, and this event's on May 30th. So they're giving some people time. You've trained for the event in the past and completed it. What is, when you were looking at April 5th in years past, 6 weeks out from the event, what was your training like? Had you completely ramped up yet at this point? Or where are people sitting and training right now, you think, and how does this affect their training plan, obviously?
Personally, I hadn't completely ramped up at this point. At this point, usually in my training, I'd done 1, maybe 2 races. I had done land run in years past. And then I've done maybe a small local event, one of the Rage Against the Chainring races out in Wichita, something maybe more high intensity for 50 miles as opposed to something that was endurance. I'd probably gotten out on a couple longer solo rides, practicing my social distancing before it was what we were all expected to be doing. But I by no means had ramped up all the way yet. And so that usually would have come, I would say, to its peak in early May. Usually I would treat Maisie's Gravel Ride for Maisie's Pride, another local event here, is kind of my last, ramping it up all the way, seeing where I was at and hoping that I'd kind of hit a good spot in early May, and then start kind of just, taking a couple steps back each week, leading up to Dirty Kansas, so that my legs would be fresh and would be good for those 200 miles, because, boy, they're no joke. So it definitely, I would say, impacts everybody else, because now a lot of times, I know myself, I know a lot of other riders we talk to, after Dirty Kansas is over in June, we kind of take the summers off. Maybe we still ride, but the intensity drops down. They're the more fun rides. We ride through the nights. I know last summer, you and me, we went out riding a lot of times until 11 o'clock or midnight, and just kind of had good rolls out there. And so for folks that are training to want to do some pretty impressive things, their summer rides are going to have to be probably a whole lot more intense than normal.
Correct, but you also talk about, like, when we were training for the Cannonball, this is kind of segueing into our weather conversation about September. Leland made it very clear in his interview that September is not a walk in the park in Kansas. I can attest to you, we do not know what the weather will be in September in Kansas one day to the next.
Correct.
So the thing to remember is, the one thing that's coming back in my mind, and it seems like forever ago when we rode in the fall, but it does cool down in the evenings. We don't usually get that relief as much in May or June. So maybe you're not racing the sun, you're just racing to finish. All of a sudden that sun sets, the wind usually dies in the summer or in the fall at night. So there are some advantages there. I think this would be a good time. It's obviously not happening in this episode, but we should talk to Frank Waugh down in Wichita, the meteorologist for Cake TV, and see if he could do a climatology report and just kind of talk about the seasons here in Kansas. That was a completely random. Sorry for volunteering you, Frank, for this, but we'll see if you watch the show. But anyways, moving to the fall, what are some of the other challenges, weather-wise, daylight-wise, that you're going to see?
I would say daylight is something that has to be considered, not just by the riders, but also probably by the folks at Dirty Kanza. And I'm sure that, mind you, that when we're having this conversation, it's only 2.5 hours after the time that they had made the announcement. And so over the coming weeks, they're going to have to probably think about things like start time. Because if we start the race at its traditional 6 a.m., you are rolling thousands of people out of Emporia in the dark. Sunrise is not slated until a little bit after 7. I think it's 7:04 for September 12th. And so it will be dark. Not only that, but it then sets at 7:35, I want to say, on September 12th.
7:38.
7:38, okay. And so it sets over 2 hours earlier than it would set usually in late May or in early June. And so there's about 3 hours in 10 minutes less of daylight that you're going to have that day. Now, for some folks, that's going to make no difference at all.
I think it's worth interjecting here. The question going through everybody's mind as they're watching this right now is, what about Race the Sun, since we just brought up sunset, sunrise? I did not ask Leland that on the interview yet. I am sure they are sorting through so many questions right now. Again, making this decision earlier in the day. We will have an answer on that when they're ready to give us an answer. And to be clear, they haven't released anything other than the 10th through the 13th. We don't know time of day. We know there's going to be an expo. We know it's part of the Great American Market, which is a big festival already in downtown Emporia. So my thing with this is this means even more food trucks, Neil.
Dude, I love the Great American Market Day. We were always down there usually in the fall. And just again, to talk about how the weather is, we've gone down there some years and we have been in shorts and a t-shirt and had the sunscreen on and just been sweating. And we've also been at some years down at the Great American Market and have had our winter jackets on and had on a stocking cap because it's been so cold. And so, again, it's going to be crazy. I think downtown is going to be awesome because it's going to draw a lot more eyes probably to the race. There's a lot of locals that are down there anyways, usually for the festivities, but there's a different crowd that probably comes into the Great American Market than would for Dirty Kansa, who's now going to be down there at the same time, feeding off of the energy of both events. And absolutely, Matt, it's going to be exciting because there's going to be a lot of food trucks.
Yeah, a lot of food trucks. Well, let's keep that at the top of the list right now, food trucks, unless you're racing it. And then just think about the food trucks waiting for you at the end of the night. Another thing that just came to my mind is school's back in session. I mean, people haven't seen Emporia when we have 3,000 or 4,000 college students on campus too. So that's another factor, and the thing to keep in mind that, we don't know that September is a sure thing. I think, I think everybody right now, we're taking it 1 week at a time, trying to get through all of this craziness going on in the world and getting through this. But, I think we all have to put a glimmer of hope out there that this is going to happen. And we have to keep training like it's going to happen, because I think keeping your mindset on something like this, as long as you're doing your training responsibly, it is a big thing, and it helps to get out of the house. I know a lot of our work's changed, but the other thing is there was no shortage of gravel events on the calendar before this year happened, especially in the fall. You've got your spring. DK is usually the end of what I call the spring gravel season. Then June and July, you don't have a ton. You go up maybe to the solstice up in Nebraska there sometime. But really in the Midwest United States, there's not a lot in June and July. And then the fall takes off, really kicking off with Gravel Worlds in August up in Lincoln, Nebraska. And then there's a slate of things. I would say probably a lot more regional events. But what's your take on just the overall calendar that's going to happen in the fall, Neil?
You think back at the calendar, I think back maybe we'll just throw out 5 years as a rough number. But 5 years ago, it was a lot of events that led up to Dirty Kansa. And then after Dirty Kansa, you had Gravel Worlds up in Nebraska in August. And then there wasn't a whole lot. There were events out there. There were people still racing, but a lot of folks were then moving into like cyclocross season. But now we are at a point where really, and we've talked about this on the show before, you have events every month of the year. I mean, Bobby was down in Texas back in January. He was out in California in February. You and me were down in Oklahoma in February, obviously Mid-South in March. But now what's taking place is all those events from mid-March through June, which is usually the heaviest part of the season, all of those events have now been lifted and have been placed over in the fall, which is where all the new events have started to go. And so there's a lot of new events that are taking place that have been around maybe only a few years. And now they're having events like Dirty Kansa, like Belgium Waffle, a lot of other events coming and saying we're going to also be September, October, November events. And there's going to be a ton of options for everybody every weekend. One thing I will say to that is get out and support the little guys. We're going to go to our big events. We're going to go to our Dirty Kansas. We're going to, some folks, I had Belgium Waffle on the calendar for May. November doesn't look as good for me, so we'll see what takes place with that personally. but you've got a lot of small events that need your support too. Otherwise, we're going to look at the calendar for 2021, and it might end up being a whole lot smaller because some of those small events go to the wayside.
I'm going to give a huge shout out here to Mark Hoffman, the Pony Express crew up in Marysville, Kansas. Their date was originally scheduled for September 10th to do their race. Two things I'm going to give them a shout out. One, it sounds like they worked together with Dirty Kanza to find a new date. It is now October 17th. I'm going to give them a big shout out. October 17th, we better see you in Marysville, Kansas. Another thing I want to give them a shout out for is they promoted a new bike packing thing where it's like 50 miles on Friday night, 50 miles on Saturday. I think this is the year to understand, especially with Dirty Kanza in the fall, and this is all my opinion right here on the show, is don't be afraid to go for the 200 in September here in Emporia, Kansas. But, the next weekend, maybe you go do the 50-mile race instead of the 100-mile race. Because, again, those races you would have been a part of probably in the fall anyways. Need your support. They do a lot of good things, whether it's a quote-unquote for-profit or a lot of them do a lot of non-profit things to help out things in their community, organizations, groups like that. So I think we have to not be afraid to maybe go out and do the shorter distance and understand that, one, our legs are going to be recovering after the 200 or we're gearing up for the 200. But we're going out, we're being with friends, we're understanding that gravel is more than the event, it is the community and the gathering of us all together.
Absolutely. And, I look forward to doing some of those smaller events. Pony Express was on my calendar for this year specifically for that bike packing option, to ride the 50-ish miles out to the lake the first day, to camp it out, and then to jump back on the bike and do that again the next day. That just sounded fun. It sounded like something I would enjoy doing. And when Jim was announcing on the Facebook Live video, and I didn't know that Pony Express at this point had changed their date, when he announced that Dirty Kansa had switched its date and that it was going to be that date, September 12th, I was like, man, I was so looking forward to doing Pony Express, so looking forward to going up there and taking part in that bike packing. But I also have some obligations here, my high school kids that'll hopefully be racing in the event, and me and them are planning on riding the 100 together. And I was kind of heartbroken. So it was great to hear that Mark and the crew up there at Pony Express and Black Squirrel Cycling had moved their dates, had worked, it sounds like, really closely with Jim to work that out so that toes weren't being stepped on, so that we as a gravel community were coming together in this difficult time, as opposed to it being, hey, we're the big dog and we're going to make a decision, and sorry what it's going to do with you guys. I'm very glad to see that they worked together and that Pony Express made sure that it was clear that Jim was part of working together with them on that.
Any closing thoughts for you, Neil? I want to thank you for coming on the show last minute today. I really miss you sitting right here in studio. This feels odd being 8 blocks apart, but thanks for being a part of it. Any last thoughts?
I'm just looking forward to it because, again, September, this could just be wild. I really don't know what it's going to be like. It's one of those things, obviously, we're going to get to sit back and wait because we never know what Kansas is going to throw at us. But just from personal experience around here, we talked about Pony Express. I've experienced the Pony Express where I woke up and rode that on a Saturday morning and my bottles froze. And so I've experienced that in September. I've also experienced not having enough fluids for 60 miles because it was so hot. Yeah. It's going to be wild. Kansas is going to throw us, I think, something pretty spectacular for this 15th year.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks again for joining us on the show, Neil. We miss you, Bobby. You need better internet at your house or you'd be on the show with us tonight. So we need better internet out at Bobby's house. Keep that in mind. We look forward to being back in the studio. We're going to have more content coming. This show was not planned before 6:30 this evening. Neil called me on my way driving through to get some food this evening after working all afternoon out at the farm. We have more content coming. We have a lot of great content coming. We're working on some historical pieces and stuff like that because, again, with the schedule, everything's change for the year, but we are moving with it. We want to provide content to hopefully give you a quick break from what's happening in the real world. We love our followers. We love everything going on in the gravel community. As always, make sure you follow along on gravelguru.com. This is gravel hashtag. Make sure you follow Neil at the Minister of Gravel, Bobby the Casual Cyclist, and stay tuned for our next information.